All right. Hey,
are you not counting anymore? Did I mess it up so badly?
2, and then 0 for silent, like they do in show business. People, show business.
You're not show business. You're JR.
Yeah, it could be, maybe someday.
Only when you grow up.
We all gotta have dreams, Cisca. Don't.
Your mommy told you were special, and she wasn't wrong.
That she did. All right. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans, it's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just 3 nerdy veterans geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. So without further ado, we are going to introduce you to our guest, the one, the only, the legendary Mr. Daniel Potter. So could you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Oh, hi, everybody. I'm Dan. Or Daniel, as you prefer, and I am the author of a new series called Full Moon Medic, which features a paramedic werewolf trying to save a half-fae child from a very nasty red cap who's disguised as basically Santa Claus, and he's the most scariest Santa Claus you will ever see.
Is it more Santa Claus or Krampus?
No, he looks like a very strung out, like Salvation Army Santa with a little plastic bell that clacks instead of rings.
Interesting. I might have to pick that one up. All right. So
dare you read it at Christmas?
I got no shame. I'll do it. So the next part of the introduction, dear listener, is where we tell you how we found him. So he actually reached out to us. He reached out specifically to Cisca and said, hey, you want to do an interview? And we had room on the docket, so we said yes, and the rest, as they say, is history. Wait, Doc, before we forget, did you meet him at a bar too? Because we know about your problem.
I have no problems other than the lack of sleep.
All right. So you haven't met him at a bar yet. All right.
We can fix that. He has to come out, come to Dragon Con. We can fix that. Dragon Con is a bar.
It's an alcoholic
one giant bar. It's very long.
It might as well be.
All right.
Well, I contacted you guys. Well, really, Podium connected us because the audio version of the first book, Emergency Shift, comes out on the 15th of September, and we are very excited for that. And that is performed by Cindy K.
Ooh. I love it when you get a good female narrator. So, Granted, I mean, I love Nick Podell's narration too. So, I mean, I am equal opportunity with the love of my narrators. So, but that is going to be exciting.
Yeah.
Is this your first audiobook?
It's my fourth, actually.
Okay.
So, I have 3 series. One is Freelance Familiars, which is an urban fantasy about a guy who gets turned into a mountain lion in chapter 2 and has stayed the mountain lion for the last 5 books. And that is a look at magical society from the perspective of familiars. And his sidekick is a squirrel who likes to blow things up named Rudy. So,
I like the squirrel.
Yeah.
Me too.
I want a pet squirrel.
they apparently are bad pets because they have very sharp claws and they land on you all the time.
A 9-year-old, he does that anyways.
That's also true. But we like Viking.
We do like Viking, particularly when Viking sleeps.
So there are 3 audiobooks in that series, and I published those through Find a Way.
Okay.
Self-published. But Emergency Shift is published through Podium, and I am very happy for them to do all the production stuff for me, and they have done an excellent job.
I hear that the production end of audiobooks can be very... like creating a brand new book all over again, I think is what one author once told me.
Well, it's you have to listen to your own work again and again and and send corrections and all that sort of stuff. It's very time consuming.
I can see where that would be. But on to our religion question. Valerian, Contact, or Babylon 5?
I'd wait. What was
Valerian?
the first option?
Valerian. JR picked it, so he can explain what it is.
Okay.
But if you don't know what it is, obviously it's not Valerian.
Right. I watched Babylon 5.
Valerian is a film adaptation of a graphic novel or manga. I get those confused with comic books, but it was not well received by the fans as a faithful adaptation.
Oh, I remember Valerian now. It was really pretty looking, but no.
Yes, it was. I enjoyed the movie, but I've never read the graphic novel, so I had no dog in that fight.
Yes. I would have to say Babylon 5. I remember watching a season or two.
Okay.
I'm not a devotee. I'm not really a devotee of much TV shows. I don't watch a lot of.
Okay, well, we're going to try some fantasy ones, and maybe you'll like one of these.
Okay.
Jumanji, Jurassic World, or Hellboy?
Hellboy.
I figured it might be Hellboy. I love Hellboy. I think it's a very adorable movie.
I've read quite a number of the comics, and watched all the De Toro movies. I didn't see the newest one yet.
That is understandable. I hardly ever get into the media, so I get sucked into books too much. So, really, what was your first love, sci-fi or fantasy?
So, really, the most influential books on me are David Brin.
Okay.
And his Uplift, his Uplift series, and that was really what got me into thinking about non-human characters, because he has aliens in those, and obviously like uplifted dolphins and gorillas, and he managed to like make them seem really interesting characters while also highlighting, the differences and that sort of stuff. And those are the books that I always go back to as like where I kind of got the bug, because you'll notice all my books have inhuman main characters in some way. We've got a werewolf, and I do a lot more werewolfing than a lot of shifter authors in immersion in full.
Your kitty cat agrees.
And obviously the freelance familiars, and in my other series, the Horned Serpent, the dragon has a point of view.
That's awesome.
So what was your first memory of engaging in speculative fiction? Was it reading something, watching a show, playing games?
Oh, I was a book vacuum cleaner when I was a kid. Like, there was some, like, I don't know. It was like I had these old blue hardbacks, like just from my like paper bags of these old blue, like Mrs. Fizzlebottom or something about this magic old woman or something. And it was, there was Hardy Boys in there and some other stuff, but just these paper sacks of books that I found in my grandparents, and I read through them all when I was young.
Your grandparents had a much better book collection than mine did.
And yeah, there's been very little I've read by myself that hasn't, at least when I was younger, that wasn't science fiction or fantasy.
Okay.
I only got into nonfiction as an adult when I started writing the stuff, and I needed a break.
I can understand that. It wasn't until my late 20s, early 30s that I started willingly reading nonfiction. So, is that your cat?
So, yes, he is upset that he is locked out of the room.
Oh.
So does he appear in any of your books? or she?
No. Einstein. I do use him in advertising occasionally. He is occasionally a model cat.
Nice. All right. So, what is it about speculative fiction that you love?
Everything. I don't. What do? That's like.
I know.
It's like my life is speculative fiction. Just trying to articulate that is difficult. I've always lived in my head. I've always had like creations going on. Hold on, I have to let this cat in.
I feel so bad for him. You want to be the first cat on the podcast?
Oh. Yes.
Oh,
Do we have to pay for a model cat now? Like, do we got to pay for the model fees?
no.
Yes, now he's in there. Yeah, so I mean, I got my PhD when I went for my PhD. Really, I was going in to become a mad scientist, and only when I got slapped by reality halfway through, and did I realize that was actually I was not nearly as smart as I thought I was in terms of science, and
But I have been told that PhDs are designed to make people do that.
Yes, they are soul crushing endeavors in one way or another.
Yeah, no, I read a great meme the other day, and it was somebody going, reading for fun implies that there is not reading for not fun. And they went, what do you think getting grad school is? So, yeah.
Yes. Well, unless you get a graduate degree in history, and then all of it's fun because you like all of it.
No. You just like pain, JR.
Nobody's perfect. All right. So
science is where it's at. Just shush.
Yeah. All right. So how did your love of speculative fiction, the very broad genre, transition into you writing stories in this field?
Well, I hit that wall in grad school and realized science wasn't going to do it for me. So I was around 23. I had just recovered from a stomach ulcer, a stress-induced stomach ulcer, and I started looking at, okay, I need a creative outlet. What do I do? So that took, I tried to teach myself how to draw. I tried a bunch of different things, tried to teach myself how to code because I love video games. I'm a huge gamer. That didn't work.
Coding.
I'm like, I read a lot of webcomics. Let's do webcomics. And I was in love with Neil Gaiman and Sandman and that sort of stuff.
It's well worthy of love.
Yes. And I'm like, I'm going to make like urban fantasy webcomics. And I didn't know how to draw. I'm like, well, I'll use my little postdoc salary to try and hire an artist in Indonesia. And I did that for 2 years, and nobody really read it. And when I got unemployed, I dropped that. And 2 years later, it was like, okay, well, I guess I'll novel. We'll do some noveling. And after about 2 years of noodling with that, I wrote Off Leash, which is the first freelance familiar book after taking a break from a serious sci-fi I was trying to write, and wrote that in NaNoWriMo in a month. And then it was off to I'm like, I finished something. I guess I should publish it. I mean, that's what you do. And it got some success. So yeah, and I continued that series. Then I tried an epic fantasy, The Horned Serpent, and that did a lot worse, though I feel like it's pretty good, but no one else agrees with me. So I went back to Freelance Familiars for 2 books, and then I also got the idea during the pandemic for Abby and Secret from Emergency Shift, and that released in April, and that blew up. I've that book made more than Off Leash in a month than the last book had in 5 years.
Oh, wow.
So I got picked up by Podium, and everyone really loves the book.
That is a
Sometimes you
good
have
problem to have.
Sometimes you have to find your niche. I had a friend who he wrote horror for decades. He did an epic fantasy and it exploded. And he was like, really? But sometimes you find your niche and it's not necessarily what you thought it was when you started. So, but that's kind of cool though. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And Bear, did you ask number 9?
Yes, that was the one he just answered.
Sorry, I fell asleep before the podcast, and that's a recipe for ADHD, being extra active. So many authors let their real life experiences influence their stories. Were there any formidable moments that shaped you as a storyteller? And actually, also, did your PhD come in handy with writing this?
I mean, you'll see the PhD-ness in my magic system sometimes. Like, Freelance Familiars is a comedy series that has a sort of very weird fourth dimensional magic system.
Okay.
But when I started writing, it was very much I was doing science on my day job, and so I was like, at the door, kerplunk.
I can understand that. So I've seen that kind of thing. It's why I read mostly fantasy, because I do science and I need the break.
Yes. I would like to try and write like a biopunk sci-fi eventually. But I need more bandwidth, and right now the fantasy is really working for me. So we're gonna ride a full moon medic. I want that at least 6 books, and since I'm really only a 2 book a year, 2 maybe 3 if I can get all the timings right, books a year author, it's going to be a little while before I'm feeling like, oh, let's throw that all out the window and write sci-fi.
No, don't throw it out the window. Just alternate. When you get like halfway through the series, be like, maybe I'll take a break and I'll write this thing, see how that works, and then go back. I think it was Patricia Briggs in an interview. She said she did like a 2-to-1 ratio. She would do 2 of one series and then 1 of the other. So, and they're set in a shared universe, so it worked out well for her. But yeah, I mean, just do what works for you, and also definitely feed the fans. They like their food.
Yes.
So they get cranky when they don't get it. But transitioning a bit from the writing side, since you've been writing for a while, has anybody asked you about your autograph out in public, away from a book signing event, maybe?
Not really. I have been at cons where they sort of like stop at the table. Oh my God, I've read that. And that's always a nice feeling.
That is great, particularly because fans don't often recognize what their authors look like.
Right. And my current author photo is, I don't know. I didn't have the hat. I don't have the hat in it. I'm trying to brand around the hat, so I need to update that. I mean, Garrett Pratchett always had a hat, so it worked for him. So,
what made you pick that hat as your branding?
Why did I pick this hat? Because I found it on Cape Cod. I was visiting my parents in P-Town, and it's a really nice kangaroo leather hat.
I like it better than George R. Martin's hat. That normally looks like it needs a wash.
Yes, it does.
This is now old enough that I really need to recondition the leather. Fortunately, it doesn't show up on this camera too well, the discoloration. So, but I will. That is a project. Hopefully, I will tackle soon. brim's just a little faded, you know. It's well
That
used.
can happen. So can you tell, well, you've actually given us a bit of your highlight reel of your body of work. So already it's the 3 different series, right?
Right. So there's Freelance Familiars, which is 5 books. There are 3 of them are in audio. Once I'm done with the second Full Moon Medic book, I'm going to go and hopefully finish that 6th book in that series.
Okay. Will that 6th book be the last book?
We'll see, because I'm a discovery writer and I never know quite what's going to come out of the book.
That is fair. I always laugh when I see the non-discovery writers who plan things out, and they're like it, and then they're going. I think Kate Forsyth and her Witches of Elenia. I have some of the original of the first 3 books, and in the back of book 2, it said, and each of these books is this thick in paperback, and they're like David Weber, George R. R. Martin thick, and it goes, stay tuned for the conclusion. And you're like, there's no way, unless a meteor hits the planet or a volcano destroys everybody, that you're going to finish this up in 3 books. And sure enough, there were 4 more after it.
I mean,
yes. All my book ones are typically Freelance Familiars are about 70 to 80,000 words.
Okay.
And they get longer each time. Currently, the manuscript of the second Full Moon book, which I'm editing as fast as I possibly can, is standing at 120,000 words.
That's a good 10 hours on audio.
Yeah. So, I mean, Podium's going to be happy.
I'd be happy too. I devour audiobooks.
Yeah, my first books are really like origin stories, and then things get complicated.
That's kind of how life works, though.
Yeah.
So 120,000 words, Doc, is roughly about 300 to 400 pages, depending on how it's formatted.
I'm so glad you finally understand that I have no idea when people give me word counts. I'm like, cool, that sounds thick.
Yeah, you roughly anywhere between 250 to 500, depending on a lot of factors, words per page.
That's how you know people are either editors or authors, is because they give you word count, and you're like, and you can tell by the blank looks that they're readers.
Well, it's also it also factors in where you read. Do you read the print book? Do you read the Kindle or the digital book? And then what device you're reading it on? Because some pages are bigger on the handheld devices. So
I don't know. I know that when I go and I do them for my readathon, I have a reading club, and we do an annual count, and I'm behind, which is fine, because I think they prefer for me to be behind, because it surprises everybody in the other chapter when what we're competing against. Then when I finally turn in my page count, I read at least 2 books a month, and if they're audiobooks, I'll go through a book a week. So an hour. I did a 40-hour book in a week, and my friend goes, "What?" And I'm like, "Well, you dared me. That was your problem."
So since I went full-time authoring, I am not doing audiobooks nearly as fast, because I don't have a commute, and I'm not doing mouth surgeries for 8 hours a day.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah, so my reading intake has really taken a hit, ironically.
I can understand that.
That has to be a little bit frustrating. That's why when I walk my dog, I listen to audiobooks or podcasts. And so the interesting parts keep me going. I'm like, well, I guess I got to do another lap. I have to find out how this ends.
Nice.
That's
my
motivation.
My problem with doing it with a 20-minute elliptical or something like that is then I'll get stuck on it, and I won't want to start my writing. I have a strict habit-based writing schedule. I start at 7:30. And so if I start and get stuck in an ebook, I've just blown my entire, or an audiobook, then I've blown my entire writing day.
Oh, I can understand that.
because I get addicted, and that's the danger of like that's my problem. Not a problem, but something I have to plan for. And so I tend to just, when I finish a project, I binge read for like 2 weeks and just do that.
That's why I had to put Skyrim down, because I get addicted and I can spend a lot of time on it. So I had to turn it off. My Xbox now has dust. Well, not dust on it because I actually dusted. I mean, it's not like that, but metaphorical dust.
But Skyrim's so pretty.
It is. I used to be an adventurer until I took an arrow to the knee.
Yeah. I play a lot of roguelikes because they have, you do a run and then you're done, right? So I play a lot of Hades and Enter the Gungeon and that sort of stuff. And it's just like I write from basically 7:30 to 4 o'clock, and then my brain's kind of done with words,
I can understand that. You guys are talking about games, and the last game I bought is still in the shrink wrap, and the expansion has come out, and the sequel, and the expansion sequel, the sequel to the.
I don't think I bought a shrink wrap.
Yeah. Well, all of that sounds fascinating. Today, we're here to talk about his book, Emergency Shift, book 1 in the Full Moon Medic series. So where did you get the premise for this universe? How did you come up with the idea? Was it psychedelics, Ouija board, smelling too much formaldehyde?
Okay, so it's really was a pandemic inspired book. I have a friend who is an awesome person, and she is a transgender EMT, and from the stories that she has told me, I really wanted to do a story about where the hero was a paramedic. And so obviously I'm a straight white man, and I wasn't comfortable doing a trans character as the main character, but since there is a character who is the best friend and has her own very intricate plot, who is a trans paramedic in the story. But that's where the idea started. And I also was looking at, urban fantasy as a whole, and I'm just wanting a werewolf sort of world and story that's dangerous. So, you read urban fantasy today, and someone says, "Oh, you're a blah blah. You're a vampire. You're a werewolf. You're a mage." These are the rules, right?
Rules are boring.
These are all the things that you can and can't do. Like, and I didn't want any of that. I didn't want the elder vampire enclaves who are wealthy and control the political environment. I didn't want the werewolf packs who are militarized. They live in huge warehouses together and that sort, and they're wealthy again. So this is it is based right as magic is coming back. All those creatures have not been present up until this moment. And so Abby, during the course of, starts kind of like an unconscious werewolf, and you'll see as the plot progresses towards the end, she's a big werewolf. But she's the only werewolf.
Ooh.
And so the series is her overall, she has to make a werewolf society eventually. And the things that are coming back, the things that don't start as human, the fae, the undead, they're coming back hungry because they've been shut out of the world for hundreds of years. years, and they've been starving in these alternative planes of existence. So it is not a safe world. And I was inspired by Anne Bishop's series, where the supernaturals really rule, and they are still kind of the main characters. And so this series is about change. It's during the magical apocalypse, and each successive book will get deeper and deeper into that.
So, go ahead.
Yeah, but the first book is really about Abby. She's losing track of herself, and during full moons, she's destroyed her apartment a couple times. But she hasn't hurt anybody or anything like that. But she goes out on a call, and there's this Fey knight, mortally wounded. There's body parts everywhere that are like belching gas because they're dead trolls. And there's a cat-eared child there who's like, what am I gonna do? And in the course of treating this Fey warrior, she's like, the warrior asks her to take care of this child. And Abby, being a paramedic, she generally just humors everybody who's in her cab just to keep hope alive. And so they'll get to the hospital alive. And so she says yes. And when she tries to give this child to protective services, she nearly has a heart attack and dies.
So I have to ask, Doc, you read a crap ton of fantasy novels, and I'm new.
Who, me?
Yeah, you. So is this idea where magic's actually just coming back? Is that a new thing? I haven't heard a lot of that.
There aren't many books actually dealing with like the emergence. Most people kind of skip that kind of chaos, which is fine. I mean, if that's what they want to do, but I think that's what makes this also stand out. And particularly in a time where I'm going to get a little bit horrible and normal. And I don't think that we're in the new normal. I think we're trying to find the new normal still. So when I think that being the book's world being in a state of flux and ours being in a state of flux is probably one of the reasons why it's really jiving and speaking to readers. So, I mean, it's what I would find interesting.
You know what? Just for that answer, Doc, we're going to double your salary.
Yay! Wait, does that mean I get 2 beers next week?
Yes, it does. 2.5 if you play your cards right. All right. So, you know what? I will call Podium up and I'll make sure they cover your drinks at Dragon Con. How about that?
Aww.
All right. So before we dig into more about the story, I really liked your cover art. So I'm going to throw that up on the screen. Can you tell us how this came to be? And then I'm going to magnify it.
Okay. So I had a very specific reference for this cover. I said, make it like Aliens 2. We wanted Abby with the young ward, carrying the young ward, looking badass. That was very specific instructions to my designer, and they really hit it out of the park. It's a great cover.
So most of the time when we see cover art, they're either go out of the way to hide the fact that the female is a female, which you didn't do. You can see the curves. You can see it's clearly a woman.
Or it's not hypersexualized either, which I like.
Right, or they go hypersexualized, and you chose neither of those conventional paths that people say are what make a good cover. So was that by design, or did that just sort of happen when the art director gave you what she gave, or they gave you?
I told them to put her in a paramedic uniform, and that's what they did. I mean, Abby's not, at least in this first book, she's not very sexual. She is still hurting from a very bad experience 10 years ago where her boyfriend committed a mass shooting. That's one of the reasons she's a paramedic, and living in that guilt. In the second book, she's there's some there is some romance, but I write my romance very different from a standard romance. I'm trying to get at complicated but adult relationships, and so there's not like lust at first sight, and that's or there's no like first mates or that sort of stuff.
Okay. I think that works, and I mean, you're not billing this as a romance novel either, so the romance subplot doesn't have to follow the typical sort of trajectory of happily ever after that you get in a traditional romance novel either.
It's much more about building family, but when you build family, you know, there can be romance in that process.
Yeah, I like that. All righty, we'll leave that up on the board because that's just a pretty image, and we'll throw us all back. And Doc, the next question is yours.
So, can you give us your 30-second elevator pitch for this novel?
30-second. And are you going to time this?
No.
We can, but we normally don't. We only time like Doug Burby because it's funny.
Well, in our defense, he timed himself.
That's probably because Doug knows I do it. I pick on Doug a lot. Doug deserves it.
Yeah.
But, you know.
So take your time, but just the Reader's Digest, spiel about the story.
Okay. Right. So Abby Knight is a werewolf paramedic who through accidentally making a promise to a fatally wounded Fey Knight is bound to take care of a little girl who's half Fey and can open the gates to Fatum, where very hungry fairies reside, as they've been locked out of the real world for centuries. And she has to survive and stop a red cap from abducting her back to the land of the Fae. Or the entire city will be overrun with the Queen of Winter's minions and appetites.
So when you say hungry Fae, does that mean hungry as in we're going to eat their souls or eat them, or just power hungry? What do you mean by hungry?
All of the above?
They're Fae. They don't really exist just on food.
Yeah. So, some really like, the red cap, who is named Lil Nick, feeds on fear. But, he's got buddies who feed on directly on blood. Some that, feed on pain or just sadness, depression. It's the whole winter court gambit in there. There's one that feeds on outrage. She makes an appearance in the book. There's one knight who feeds on fatalism.
Okay.
Interesting. I wonder what that would taste like.
What?
Okay. What?
I was going to go somewhere, but it is not appropriate to our family-friendly rating, so we'll just move on.
Jared, I think, likes to say that when he starts to say stuff and then forgets what he says.
You're not supposed to give out my secrets.
It was a secret? Really?
Jeez, woman, you're fired.
No, you just doubled my pay. So what is it that you think you really hit on in the way of the tropes the best in this series?
Tropes. I hit on the protect the child trope. It's kind of like a recent thing in a lot of shifter shifter fiction right now. Now, where you have a ward or you have a child, and so the main character who doesn't have a child suddenly is like, oh, I have to do mother stuff right now while dodging life and connect.
I think it's because there are so many moms who are readers out there personally, and some of it, and to be honest, there is something really wonderful about watching somebody else get struggle and go, yeah, see, they're annoying. I mean, you love them, but they're annoying.
I mean, Secret's a little easier than a real kid because she can turn into a cat, a small kitten, and be adorable. And especially when she's feeling uncooperative and grumpy, she'll just turn into a cat and start knocking stuff off counters and that sort of thing.
That sounds very catty.
Yes.
Can she change into other creatures or just a cat?
No, she just changes into a cat. And there was a brief moment she was a small panther.
Which is still feeling okay.
It's a cat. Totally get that. So do you think there's anything really that makes your novel, other than the fact that you are dealing with the kind of upheaval, really special and unique in the field of urban fantasy? Or just that is there anything, we kind of talked some about this already, but I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add, so I asked.
I mean, it's really about these, it's not so much like saving the world as it is carving out places in a changing world for you and your family. Abby doesn't doesn't really go, oh, I'm going to, I'm saving the world or anything. She is dealing with the people she cares about and trying to make decisions that will be best for them. And on one side, and the other side is she is trying to hold on to her identity as a healer, as even though she's becoming a monster.
So I really got to ask this question, but does the world at large know that this is what's going on?
Well,
or is it kind of in the
no, because they've been picking up occasionally when they call it Code Z when somebody dies in the ambulance and then tries to bite them.
Oh my goodness!
Oh, that would be.
They carry what they call the de-animator, which is basically a short barrel shotgun in all the ambulances now.
So it's common enough that paramedics know to watch for it, but not so common that it's a thing.
Right.
Okay.
So yeah. So it's it's localized to Portland right now. Where it's set. And so when the authorities go and say, hey, we got zombies here, nobody in the federal government believes them. Or even statewide. It's like, oh, it's Portland being weird.
I mean, it does kind of have that reputation.
Right.
I think they actually have a Keep Portland Weird campaign going too, but
Austin, Texas does too.
Yeah, I think that's Austin. I mean, Portland's still pretty weird. I mean, it's a little techified, but I live the reason I said it in Portland was because I'm an hour south of it.
Okay.
The plan was before the pandemic hit, I did have some inkling of this idea before the pandemic hit, was to go up there and hang out and do a lot of research on Portland. But, pandemic, I go up there and drive around and try and get the location set. But haven't done a lot of socializing in Portland yet.
Eventually.
Yeah.
So, other than the urban fantasy, what genre or subgenres does it, you think the story fits best into?
So it is I would call it sort of thriller. It does very well in the thriller suspense werewolf genre or category in Amazon. It still ranks there, even though it was released in April. So, but yeah, it's kind of a werewolf flavored urban fantasy thriller, and she is in this book. She's not so much of a werewolf as she is running for her life from the Fae. Second book is much more raw, rip things to pieces, but
Okay. So now in the story itself, what can you tell us about your main character? What do you think makes her stand out in the crowded field of science fiction and fantasy?
Abby. So I really wanted to present a world that is an urban fantasy world that is more recognizable to me. My spouse is and deal with some real world issues, and so she is a paramedic because her life was she's working on a guilty complex from this mass shooting in her past, and she's constantly trying to overcome that. She bought the fella his gun, so she deals with that sort of guilt. And as a paramedic, it gives her a very different perspective on the city, on the police, on the culture than a lot of heroes. But she's not plugged into like an investigative apparatus. So she doesn't have those resources, and she's trying to maintain her job throughout these sort of events. So it's much more of a fly by wire for her. There's no real procedural elements until the supernatural involves the medical community, which happens more in the second book. But yeah.
Okay, so were there any secondary characters that were especially memorable to you? Maybe that transgendered paramedic friend.
Right. So Cindy is a transgender woman who is not out to her coworkers at the start of, other than Abby at the start of the story. She's out to Abby because they spend a lot of time in the ambulance together. We have Victoria, who is, Abby is the first werewolf of Portland. Victoria is the first necromancer. And she and Abby share a kind of blood bond from the prelude story, which is called Twilight Run, where Victoria was the patient that got sucked into the underworld, and Abby and Cindy had to drive her out. And she's a fun character with even more fun zombies. And then there is Ray, who is a three-tailed fae, fox fae, who is a blending of the Japanese Inari goddess and Reynard, who is the European fox, who is basically a scheming bastard. So she's fun.
That sounds like a heavy cast of characters. But do you have a bad guy other than just the red cat that you can tell us about without giving too many spoilers?
Little Nick is it's mostly them trying to defeat Little Nick.
Okay.
Who is this horrible force of nature and is seemingly unstoppable, and the longer he's in the real world, the bigger he gets because he is feeding on all the fear he creates. He kind of swells up into like this malevolent carnival balloon after a while.
Okay. So, I gotta ask, if your characters found you in a back alley and they knew who you were, how do you see that playing out?
Like, I wouldn't survive. No.
Not even with the healer?
First do no harm?
What?
I said first do no harm. Isn't that like the medical rule? I mean, I don't know. All bets are off when she's a werewolf, but
yeah, pretty much.
You know?
Yeah. I don't think they would be too appreciative of the hell I put them through.
fair enough.
Oh, I can kind of understand that. So what is your favorite character archetype when writing?
When writing.
Or just even reading. How about either or?
I mean, I don't think in character types, in archetypes, really.
Okay.
I'm so unstructured. Structured. I really so the fact is, I'm a science major and English was my worst subject, and so archetypes in any sort of formality classification like that, I don't really know.
Okay, that's fair.
I am very much, I have characters running around in my head and we put them out into the world and we watch them act, and through experience, I've managed to sort of know how to corral them into a story arc that is sort of climbing towards a big finale, and I can push them and stop them from talking for chapters and chapters at each other and just being snarky and palling around. But in terms of like archetypes, I leave those to like people talking about reading and talking about my work than any sort of internal like, oh, this is this archetype or that is that archetype.
Okay.
All right, so this is where you get to give us a sneak peek at how the sausage was made. So were there any cool scenes or ideas that you had to cut from Emergency Shift that maybe you find a way to use someday, or you just really liked but they just didn't fit for whatever reason?
So there were just a few scenes that were cut out of Emergency Shift. It was actually a pretty easy write compared to my usual panic-ridden, chaotic process. And that was one scene where Abby and Secret are literally running through the Feyland. And it was just this really cool. My spouse found it boring. That's why it got cut. But I thought it was really cool where they are running through this highway and all the different Fey realms are represented by these islands floating through the sky. And meanwhile, in this high sky, the forces of the moon and the sun are fighting each other. And these roads are actually snakes, and they run between the separate castles of the winter and the summer courts, and they can see the starving Fae all looking at them hungrily, and two Fae knights come out into the road, one gold, one black, and start slowly pursuing them as they are running down this road, and Abby is towing Secret via a bike cart.
That does sound interesting. So hopefully we'll get to read that soon. So finally, what can you tell us about the universe at large? In miniseries, the good ones anyway, the worlds where the story is told is as much a character as the protagonist or the antagonist. So can you give us a hint of what we can expect? Is it just the modern world with the magical shift? Is there more?
So there are there beyond the main world. What happened was there is the twilight and the dream and the corruption. And what happened in the ancient times is the twilight and the dream. So twilight are the dead people, the dream are the fae. Got together with the sun with Helos and shut away the corruption because it was chewing up everything. And the crossroads is the mundane world. And what happened was that because of that seal, the moon was jealous and sabotaged it. So it cut off over time both the twilight and the dream from the crossroads. And now Luna, who is the moon goddess, is ascending over the sun, and she's opening things up again. But meanwhile, both the citizens of the twilight and the dream have been starving because they've been shut away, and they are all rushing into the real world. And Victoria, the necromancer, kind of broke the localized reality, resurrecting a vampire. And so everything is flooding into Portland first. And so it will eventually become worldwide, but everything is going wrong in Portland first.
Wasn't the Grimm series the urban fantasy set in Portland as well?
It was.
Yes. And I did really like that series.
It was an awesome series.
Yeah,
it was, but maybe
everyone in Portland was some sort of beast by the end.
Yeah. So Emergency Shift is clearly part of a series. I know because it says so on Amazon and you told us. There are currently one book published, one in pre-order, but is their story done after that? Will there be more from these characters?
No, there's probably 6 books in Full Moon Medic. And then I have plans, if people are still interested in the series, A Grown-Up Secret will probably get a spin-off.
Okay. What about Cindy and the Necromancer, Veronica? No, it started with a V, right?
Veronica,
I was right? Okay.
Victoria.
Victoria.
She was originally named Veronica. It's Victoria.
Cool.
Probably not. Maybe it depends on what the fan reaction is. I'm planning a short story which details Cindy and Ray's relationship because they are a couple.
Okay.
The second book.
So we all know that every literary universe has its own internally consistent rules of science, technology, and magic, or magic in the case maybe. So do we have any tech that doesn't exist now in your book, or is the difference mainly through the magic?
Difference is mainly magic. It's set about 10 years in the future, so electric cars are more commonplace and that sort of stuff, particularly in Portland. Their ambulance is electric.
Interesting.
And there's,
you have any? Oh, go ahead.
Other than that, not really. They've been struggling with a few other plagues in addition to the corona, so that might have been. We have hyperflu and Ebola R, which was fun.
Don't give Mother Nature any ideas.
Yeah, no more ideas. So is there any magic, probably more so than even tech, that you would use, that you would want from your series to have in today's world for you?
Most of the magic is blood-based or soul-based or contract-based. Victoria is very hyped, as in, because magic is coming back, your word is much more important.
Mhm.
And so she feels in the long run that this will make everyone much more honest with each other. The Fae think that that's very funny.
So
I think that people will be very careful with what they say, though.
Yes, but at the moment in the world, not many people have cottoned on to that fact.
okay. So will names be powerful then? Like in some fantasy worlds where your name has power, your
Names
true
are part of it. Contracts. It's a big part of book 2. Actually, you probably want to start reading those employment contracts extra carefully.
Yeah, I could imagine so.
you might
Especially,
accidentally
if you
find a
find
Faustian margin.
clauses that, like, oh, if you die on the job, you don't get to leave.
Oops.
Oops. Yeah, no, I would think that would be a problem. So when you went about creating your magical creatures for this world, did you get inspired by nature, nightmares, too much time staring at rats?
I'm very inspired by the World of Darkness role-playing games in this.
Okay.
Game.
That started in Atlanta.
Yeah, cool.
See?
But
Atlanta's a geeky town.
I was one of those kids who had a lot of books, but not many friends who were really into playing them with me. And so I read werewolf, vampire, mage, cover to cover, all the supplements, but didn't play in much. And so that's I really like that darker mythos of these urban flavor of urban fantasy. So, there's definitely horror, gruesome elements. I've been called out multiple times in reviews for being too gory.
Paramedics are kind of a gory job, though.
Yeah, and I did spend 15 years doing animal surgeries. I'm immune to gore. I find it interesting. So that's just what I am.
I've met some paramedics and they tend to have a dark humor, especially if they're in certain types of cities. So that actually kind of fits with what you've created anyway. So I don't know why anybody would be shocked, but
one of the people have really liked that they call cases where they think a vampire is involved. It's another double-barreled mosquito.
I like that one.
Okay, so clearly this interview is winding down. We're at about an hour mark. But was there anything that we didn't ask that you wanted to tell us about Emergency Shift or the Full Moon Medic series before we wrap?
Oh man, what haven't we covered? Not really. It's really a series where my heart really is right now, and I'm very much trying to represent a world I live in and add these monstrous magical elements to it. I want it to feel a bit more current than some other urban fantasy, which feels a little cordoned off from our world. Like things are simpler in those other stories.
So this might be a good place to remind everybody. You said the first audiobook is being released by Podium Publishing on what day?
The 15th of September.
So if you're
pre-order.
This is going to come out on the 10th. So if you're listening to this, you have 5 days. Go pre-order it now. He's got one of my credits already. So, all right, Daniel, how can listeners find you? And as usual, dear listener and viewer, this will be on the show notes, so you can go follow the links if you don't want to write it down or remember. But how can listeners find you?
Right. So I am, my webpage is danielpotterauthor.com. I am on Facebook at Fallen Kitten Pro. Or you can just Google or Google my, well, don't just Google my name, search my name on Facebook. There are a lot of Daniel Potters out there. So Fallen Kitten Productions. Look for that on Facebook. I am Fallen Kitten Pro on Twitter. Where else am I? I have a Patreon if you want to seek me out there, and that's under Daniel Potter. And that's about it so far. I have designs to branch into Instagram and TikTok at some point. We'll see if I have the funds to and energy to do that. But yeah, so that's where I am currently.
Okay. That all sounds exciting, and that will be linked. And if you want to just Google him, if you type Daniel Potter author, you find him. If you just type Daniel Potter, you get lots of weird Harry Potter stuff. You probably never heard of it, but anyway.
I have to talk to my mother about my name in SEO, you know.
Yeah, I mean,
you got to plan for that, Mom, when
right?
you name a kid. Can't just like do a generic name.
So you can find us, dear listener, on our website at anchor.fm/blasters, tack, and tack blades, anchor.fm/blasters, tack, and tack blades. You can follow us on Twitter at SF_fantasy_show, Sierra Foxtrot _fantasy_show. You can email us at blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. I promise we even answer it. We have a Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Blasters and Blades Podcast, /group/Blasters and Blades Podcast. Are you noticing a theme, people? And you can support the show at buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. One more time, that's buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section that it's for the podcast. I promise I will keep my co-hosts Doc Cisca and Nick Garber duly intoxicated. They will drink until their liver surrenders.
Never surrender.
Oh, that was kind of weak, Doc. You got to do
I was in the middle of drinking.
because you weren't surrendering. That's right.
Yeah, see?
All right, so you can support us on Buy Me a Coffee or on a monthly recurring basis over at anchor.fm/blasters, tack, and tack blades. And it does help defray the cost of operating a podcast. So every shilling is appreciated.
Thank you for spending your time with us. I know it's precious. For the absentee Nick Garber, the overworked J.R. Handley, I'm Cisca. This was the Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back next week, same time, same place, where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, pineapple on pizza, cheesy jokes, torturing JR, and all things that go boom, especially if they're in a lab.
Wait. You're nodding your head to pineapple on pizza. Are you one of those?
Yes, he is, because all the good people are.
Pineapple and bacon. It's the best.
All right, it's a good thing we're ending the show. I'd have to kick you.
No.